Okay, so um,
We're diving into some pretty heavy stuff today, huh? We're talking about Al Pacino, right?
Al Pacino, yeah.
Yeah.
And
This kind of reminds me of, you think you know a guy, right? You've seen him in all the movies.
right.
Scarface, Godfather, all that. And then suddenly you read these interviews, the New York Times, People magazine, and he's talking about
Yeah, it's like
this crazy near-death thing he went through.
he's always been so private. It
You
makes
know?
you wonder what made him decide to open up about this now,
Yeah.
especially something so intense.
Right. Right. So 2020, peak pandemic, right?
Right. Well,
Pacino's at home, not feeling great.
who was feeling great in 2020?
I mean, right, exactly. But like, it gets scary. He just passes out. Gone. No pulse.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the next thing he knows, it's like a scene from one of his movies, right? 6 paramedics, 2 doctors, all in his living room.
Intense.
Totally. He even said they look like spacemen.
Well, that tracks, I guess, when you're coming to after something like that. I mean, COVID was a scary time for a lot of people. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
For sure. It reminds us that health is precious. But here's the thing that really gets me, right? He's talking about what it felt like being that close to death. And it's not what you'd expect.
Yeah, no kidding. He called it like a strange porridge.
Strange porridge, yeah. I remember that.
No white light, no memories, no angels.
Right. And he even quoted Hamlet, talk about bringing your work home with you. Death as the, what was it, undiscovered country.
Exactly. From whose born no traveler returns.
Gives me chills just thinking about it.
It makes you wonder, what does it mean when someone comes back from something like that? And that's their takeaway.
It really throws a wrench into how we usually think about these kinds of experiences, like all those stories you hear, all those movies about near-death experiences.
They always seem to have like a comforting message,
Hmm.
you know, like everything's going to be okay.
Right, right. Like there's something else waiting for us on the other side. But this is different.
And I don't know, I just get the feeling reading his words, like he's still trying to figure it out. It's like, did he actually die?
Right.
Or was it just his brain, freaking out because his body was going through something so traumatic?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's where it gets really interesting from a psychological standpoint.
Because on the one hand, you've got what happens to the body, right? The
Yeah.
physical trauma. But then on the other hand, there's this whole other layer of mental and emotional and even spiritual implications to unpack.
Totally. Totally. I mean, people have been grappling with these questions for centuries, right? What happens when we die? Is there an afterlife?
And what does it even mean to be dead?
Exactly.
And here's Al Pacino, like right there on the front lines of this existential mystery.
I know. It's like he's living out one of those big questions we all ask ourselves.
It's almost as if like he's using this moment, with this new book coming out.
Sonny Boy, right?
Yes, anyway, it's like he's choosing this moment to kind of like drop this bomb on us.
Yeah. It's strategic, right? I mean, you don't just casually mention a near-death experience in an interview unless you want people to pay attention.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what's the strategy there? Is he like trying to drum up publicity for the book?
Maybe. But I also think there's something to be said for controlling the narrative, especially with someone like Pacino, who's notoriously private.
Yeah, that's true.
This is his story to tell on his terms.
And it makes you want to read the book, right? To see what else he has to say.
Totally. Like, is there more to the story? What other experiences has he had that have shaped his perspective on life and death?
And what's really interesting to me is you'd think an experience like that, coming that close to death, would make someone want to change everything.
Right. Like, suddenly you're seeing the world in a whole new light. You want to grab life by the horns.
Exactly. But Pacino, he just like goes back to work.
Which is kind of amazing when you think about it.
Right. He's got this new movie coming out, King Lear. Talk about intense.
It makes you wonder about resilience, doesn't it? Like, what allows some people to go through something so traumatic and come out the other side still feeling like themselves?
And still wanting to work. I mean, that's dedication.
Maybe it's about finding meaning in what you do.
You think that's it? That he just loves acting so much that even a brush with death couldn't deter him.
It's possible. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Maybe it's about accepting that life is unpredictable, that these things happen, and the best we can do is keep moving forward.
That's kind of a powerful message when you think about it. Not that we should all go out and have a near-death experience.
No, definitely not recommending that. But it does make you think about how we respond to challenges.
Right. Do we let them derail us? Or do we find a way to integrate them into our stories and keep going?
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway from all of this.
What do you mean, Pacino's story?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one story, one person's experience, but it raises some big questions that we all grapple with.
About life and death and what it all means.
Exactly.
It really makes you think, like, what would I do, you know?
Right.
If I had that kind of close call like Pacino did, would I even be the same person?
It's the big question, isn't it? Like, do we need those wake-up calls, those brushes with something bigger than ourselves to really appreciate life?
Or to finally, you know, actually go after what we really want?
It's tempting to think so, right? Like a near-death experience would be the ultimate motivator.
But then you look at Pacino and it's like he's almost taking it in stride,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating about his story. It's not about some radical transformation, some big external change.
Right. It's more like he's processing it internally,
Mm.
figuring out what it means to him.
Exactly. And that's where I think his decision to share all of this in his memoir, it speaks volumes, you know?
It's like he's saying, okay, this happened, this massive thing, I almost died, but I'm still here and I'm still me.
And I'm choosing to integrate that experience into my life, into my work, into who I am.
It's a powerful message, don't you think? Like, even in the face of something as huge as death, there's still a continuity to life.
Absolutely. It's about finding meaning, even in the unexpected, even in the face of the unknown.
And maybe that's the most profound takeaway from all of this.
What do you mean?
I mean, Al Pacino's story, it reminds us that life is this precious and unpredictable gift. And sometimes the most meaningful changes aren't about these big dramatic shifts, but about embracing who we are right here, right now.
I think you're absolutely right. It's about being present, engaged, living in a way that feels authentic to us every step of the way. And on that note, folks, we'll leave you to ponder that. Until next time, keep asking those big questions and keep diving deep.